put that there.
I think that is as good a place as any, so long as it looks odd. That's the important bit.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, this is odd because this doesn't work.
Well, yes, it is literally just, I mean, that's a future piece of equipment that will one day have things to plug into, but we don't.
How pretty is it, though?
Look, all this new podcast and stuff, what I love is we can actually thank radio DJs for this. Because radio DJs were among the first to go, I've already got a radio show, I'll just stick a camera inside my little tiny booth. And of course, radio booths are tiny and they're surrounded by all their gear.
Yeah.
And they normalised the idea of having gear in shot. The idea of a microphone could be visible there, all this sort of stuff. And I as an aesthetic, I really like it. So,
should we, just because of last week, make sure we're recording?
You know what? Let's do that.
Let's do that. We're learning, guys. Be patient with us.
Or don't. We don't care. Sorry, I don't know. What's the button?
Am I doing the right? I'm pretty sure it's record.
We're super competent. We're super competent, everybody. We promise.
Or maybe it's not because it's plugged into that. Maybe we just have to rely on.
No.
Oh, what did you do?
Bottom button on this.
Just press it. Oh, yeah. I was holding it down.
All right. Now, are you in the wide?
You set this up.
Yeah, I did. I'm going to double check.
Okay.
You entertain.
I'm not important. I'm just the tech lackey.
Oh yeah. No, you're in the shot. Lean back for me in the chair. Yeah. No. All good.
A professional
turns
establishment.
out I did actually do my job properly for a change.
Well done.
Yeah. Thanks.
So we're officially called the Oddcast. Thanks to you guys.
Thank you.
There was no pushback on that whatsoever.
Everyone loved it. No one criticised it, so it's a done deal.
Yeah, it's very unoriginal, but it will do. And
well, it's relatively original. You found one very popular podcast in India.
I did.
Which is like a Hindi language podcast. So we figure it's, if someone goes looking for the Oddcast and they find an Indian Hindi language thing, they're probably going to realise it's not the one they're looking for. I just have a sneaking suspicion.
Yeah.
So I think we're okay.
All right, done. So today I wanted to center our episode around Icarus. Yeah. And this comes thanks to Cos Samaras.
Oh, yes, okay.
Who made a quote that I thought, that's probably the best thing that's ever come out of his mouth.
Now, hang on. Icarus is the one who rose from the ashes? Or
that flew too close to the sun.
And then Daedalus is the one... So there was the phoenix rose from the ashes, obviously.
Yeah.
So Daedalus... okay, sorry. I just need to get my Greek mythology sorted in my head.
I thought this was such a perfect anecdote around the wokeism, right? He basically said peak woke was 2020. I'm paraphrasing. Peak woke was 2023, and like Icarus flying too close to the sun, the progressive left overplayed their hand.
Now, just for reference, for anyone that doesn't know who Cos is, he is a left-wing pundit. He is a pro-woke.
He is the pollster of the left, and he is definitively fairly accurate in most polls.
Yep.
And for anyone who hasn't seen this, if you want a little glimmer of hope, because we like to start the podcast with some good news.
Happy.
He's come out and saying that it has been catastrophic for the ALP.
Yeah.
Essentially, the left is bleeding voters.
Okay, I don't think that's great news because who are the Liberal Party? That would be great news if I had any faith in them at all to actually go ahead and do something. My only hope, and I posted about this, between Liberal, Labor, Nationals and Greens, they're still at 70%, 78% or 76% or something of all of the votes combined. We need to get the freedom-friendly minor parties, that's the Libertarians, One Nation, UAP, although they probably won't be able to run in this coming federal election. That's a story for another time. We've got to get those guys between them up to 30%.
Yeah. Well, this is something that my partner wanted to chat with you about. With me, you're in trouble.
Oh dear, that's always scary.
No, we were talking about your marbles video and how good it is when people take the time to watch it. But the issue is people have fractional attention spans.
Okay, so I have been debating this. Maybe you can tell me. You tell me. I have tried so hard to do a shorter version of that, and I always feel like I'm not doing the topic justice. Every time I try and do a 10-minute version or a 7-minute version, it's That might just be me, though.
You need a Carl's in there. I think we need to do it as a conversation.
But hang on, but we have a 1-hour podcast that takes 2 hours.
No,
we are not going to be able to do a shorter version.
I think what we need to do is give people the Cliff Notes version. And I just noticed your light's not on, so you don't look pretty. So you should fix that and make yourself look pretty.
I always look pretty.
You don't.
Wow.
So, if you guys haven't seen it, Topher does a marbles video where he breaks down preferential voting. I think the issue is when you go and talk to the average Australian, and I mean your normies, right? These are people who are not politically inclined whatsoever. They don't know how it works. They just go vote above the line or go all the numbers below the line.
Or just grab their how to vote ticket from their preferred major party and just follow
do whatever.
that.
Or they donkey vote, which coincidentally, that's something we need to talk about. That is actually how Daniel Andrews won his seat. Because he just so happened to have the number one spot on the ballot.
Yep.
And those donkey votes and people just, 1, 2, 3 down the line, that is actually what got Daniel Andrews re-election in, Mulgrave.
In Mulgrave, yeah.
He got such a low vote, it was only because of preference flows and donkey votes that he got his third term.
Donkey votes maybe, but I do seem to remember him getting his seat by a pretty comfortable margin. Obviously, I was really hoping that Ian Cook would do really well, and there was a Liberal Party candidate there. There were a few other independents and things there that I was hoping would do well, but it very quickly became evident that he was just really popular with people who just love tyrants. But then, it's not surprising. Tyrants are popular amongst the people that benefit from them.
Correct.
It's always been true.
Well, it's interesting because obviously now the news is this week that Ryan Mullen is now suing him for defamation, which is interesting. And I've seen some commentary around this, and I just want to shut it down really quick. There's a lot of people saying, oh, Ryan's a grifter, he just wants money. No. This is one of the only avenues available for him and us, the Victorian public, to go after Daniel Andrews.
This is so good because it's even better than just that. Daniel Andrews now has to make a decision. He either settles out of court and therefore makes an admission that he defamed Mullerman and therefore that he lied, right? Or he has to face court under oath, where if he sits there and says, I don't recall over and over again, he gets held in contempt of court. He's been put between the devil and the deep blue sea. Yeah. This is not about the money. This is actually a brilliant tactical move.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's, that's the tone for 2025 is those chickens are coming home to roost.
Bring it on.
Yeah, and I think that's, if you can take anything away from this. I had a monologue, and I was trying to memorize it so I could go, look down the camera, but I am just not that kind of broadcaster. I'm just little old me. But I'm going to say this.
Do you think?
If you guys are looking for any glimmer of hope, if you're sitting there feeling like Australia is lost, it's all doom, I know we've talked about the black pill.
Sure.
I want to say that after the last week, we now have a mandate here in Australia. The cage is open, the gloves are off, woke is dead. And if we have seen anything in the last week is that it can be repaired and immeasurably revoked within a very short time frame.
Because there was never much substance to it.
Correct.
This is the thing. It takes a long time to wash away civilizations because there's substance to them. It takes very little time to wash away fashions because there isn't substance to them. And that's what wokeness was. It was a fashion. It was a social contagion, I think is the fashionable word for fashions these days.
It was a woke mind virus. It really was. And when Elon said woke mind virus, it's was so pervasive. It has co-opted the most intelligent people, the academics, the people who are exceptional in their industries, and it co-opted them, to the point where their bigotry is on full display, but they're oblivious to their own hypocrisy.
We are literally, we just saw 100 high-profile Australians, including former Prime Minister Tony Abbott and others, signing a document saying there needs to be an inquiry into the transing of kids.
Yep.
This comes after Queensland shut it down. No more taxpayer money for underage transgender surgery or puberty blockers. This, of course, comes on the back. Actually, they did it just before Trump then pushed through his executive order this week saying that's it, no more. This, of course, happened after late last year in the UK. We saw the UK government saying no more taxpayer money for underage puberty blockers, etc. This is the worm has turned really, really fast on this. We haven't quite got there yet, but I guarantee you by the middle of this year, high-profile people will be quietly just removing the they, thems, or the he, she, he, her, all that. Pronouns will disappear from bios. Rainbows will disappear from pins and lanyards. We are watching the world change before our eyes.
And I think Australians, unfortunately, it's always done quite silently without fanfare. In America, it's a statement. It's a throw to the ground, you know. We just had Australia Day, and it was interesting to see the sentiment. I mean, I live in Danistan, in the Victorian Socialist state. You live now in New South Wales, but across the country, it is now known that most people want to keep the date. And the left only has themselves to blame for this. Your progressivism, your ideology has turned people against all that which you would try and fight for.
It's not often that I give Kos Samaras his due, but I've got to give it to him. In this case, he's absolutely right. Now, he's not original. I've been saying the same thing. 2023-24 was absolute peak woke.
Yeah.
But it's happened as a result of them, of the left overplaying their hand. They simply tried to go too far.
Yeah.
If they had if they'd stopped at a reasonable point where they said, you know what, we've taken enough ground, we'll stop waging war on ourselves, on our own people, on our own country here, then they probably would have kept all of their gains.
Yeah.
But they were never going to stop until we stopped them. And the problem with that is once we figure out that we can stop them, we figure out in the process that we can also push them backwards. And that's what's happening now.
I think the biggest thing I talked about during COVID was the pendulum swinging back. It always inevitably swings back, and it's swinging back hard, and it's knocking out a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't need to go that hard. And like, you know, as we go through the episode, we're going to be talking about a couple of these things. But the biggest thing that I took home over the weekend is that Australians want to be proud again. Australians want to be proud of their country.
Yep.
No country is perfect.
Yep.
No country has a perfect history. Every country on this earth has been won in some kind of battle, in some kind of bloodshed.
Yep.
You know, that's just synonymous with human behaviour.
If they want to call it Invasion Day, I'm very happy to call it Invasion Day. We invaded, there was a war, they lost.
Yes.
End of story.
And that's known as Independence Day in the States.
Yeah, that's human history,
Right.
is all of that. And to think that, you know, it's as absurd as saying, you know what, I'm going to hold a grudge against a young Japanese person because of what their great-grandfather did during the Second World War, right? It's absurd.
And that's a common talking point as well. It's like, at what point does the accountability stop? You know, most of us are third, fourth generation now. We weren't there. No one that's alive today was there.
Yeah.
But we are going to be held to the fire of that. Well, if that's the case, let's talk about Genghis Khan. Let's talk about Roman empires. When did we hold accountable for those guys?
And also, what's the end game? So they want reparations now. To pay the rent has sort of become the mantra. And this is why I believe why they're losing the debate about changing the date is because people are realising this isn't about the date at all. This is just about them taking. The 26th of January isn't even the date when the First Fleet landed. It had landed a week or so earlier. That was the date, I think, when the colony was declared. But to try and pretend that, if we change the date, then all these problems will go away. No, they won't. You're just going to go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. We saw that with the debate about the voice. We saw that about the statement from the heart. The statement from the heart said, we're going to get a voice. That's the first step towards treaty, which is then another interim step towards paying the rent.
Yeah.
And so that's what their ultimate goal is. That was absurd from the get-go. They've overplayed their hand, and now they're not. I literally don't believe they'll take another step forward.
I made a comment on X last week, and I said, you know, wokeism was the Trojan horse for neo-Marxism or neo-communism.
Sure. Yeah.
It was literally the thing that opened the floodgates to make people start to consider communist ideology. Now, everyone will argue with me, we're not in a communist country. I would argue we have a lot of things here in common with Soviet times.
Look at the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, and then have a look at the theory of the march through the institutions as best embodied by the Cloud-Piven strategy. Now, I'm not going to go into them here, but anyone that actually wants to sit there and go arguing, we're not a communist country, we're more than halfway there.
Yeah, exactly.
We are more than, you look at the 10 planks, look at the Cloud-Piven strategy, and realise we are more than halfway there.
And a lot of these ideologies and the actions they wanted us to take were communist in theology. That a lot of this is from the Marxist playbook.
And theology, I think you misspoke, but it is actually the correct term in my opinion. This has become wokeism is itself a religion.
Well, that was my point.
Right.
Wokeism has become, you've got to replace God with something, and we replaced it with wokeism, which it is a religion. Because if you have a look at evangelical these people have become, this is their entire persona. This is their entire personality.
And people who disagree with them aren't simply wrong, they are heretics.
Yes.
And that's how we've been treated for a long time, and I'm rather enjoying the change in atmosphere.
I am enjoying it too. It has been delicious, and I would be wrong if I sat here and said I am not enjoying the leftist meltdowns. Like, the memes are just utterly delicious. And
Not gonna lie. Not gonna lie.
So I thought the first one we would go off into, we're meant to start with good news, and we never do. I'm going to have you...
But we've just had fun, though.
We have had fun.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's good news. We can still have fun. There you go. That's your good news for this week.
So let's go into RFK Senate hearing. This has been really interesting. This is the last 24 hours.
So this is the first of, I believe, two. I believe there's a second Senate hearing that he's going to be subjected to. I don't know the details and the vagaries of how it all works. It's really interesting. RFK is a Rorschach test. People see what they expect. It's as simple as that. I've seen headlines saying he withered under pressure, he was dithering, he was flip-flopping and this and that. And I've seen headlines saying it was a masterclass, he completely destroyed them, right? It's a Rorschach test. Bottom line is he will be confirmed. I don't think there's any realistic possibility that he won't be.
Yeah.
But anyone that's actually listening to his answers has to accept that he is way more competent than he's been given credit for. His detractors are lying about it. So first and foremost, some of the commentary I've seen is actually people disappointed saying, he seems to be backtracking on his anti-vax stance. I'm like, well, but he was never an anti-vax man. What he's always said is we need to release all the data, all of the studies without any lies, and then hold people accountable where there's been deception, where there's been lies. And if something can't be shown to be good for our kids, we need to stop giving it to them. That's his position.
I think if anything to come from these Senate hearings, I'm not particularly interested in the minutiae of American legislation and how everything's run. I don't care. What I am interested in is the way people conduct themselves in these heads of states or in these political environments. And they're screaming banshees. You watch these...
astonishing.
And I can say this because I'm a woman. You can't. But these white liberal women and the way they behave...
You sexist, racist, something
It's embarrassing. It just makes me want to invert myself from cringe. I watch the way they speak and I'm like, is there any wonder people say that women shouldn't have given these jobs? The way they speak, the way they behave.
No comment.
No, I know. I'm going hard. I'll say what because you can't. I watch them like Elizabeth Warren. She is despicable at the best of times, but the way she conducts herself. You want to be taken seriously? You want people to give you authority? Then behave like you respect it. And you don't. It's embarrassing it to the head of state. And I'd say it's no different to Grace Tame and her little political stunt with Albanese. Why have we stopped respecting these institutions? Why have we stopped at the very top echelon of government behaving like civilized people?
Because these women didn't actually get there on merit. They got there as DEI highs. Pocahontas, Pocahontas being the fake 1024th Indian or something like that. You've got AOC. Let's take Grace Tame. Did she really actually earn the recognition that she got? I would argue that she didn't. That was a very, very soft Order of Australia medal compared to most of the others. So these are people that, for political reasons, were promoted into positions where they don't belong.
Yeah.
It's the old post-turtle thing. It's like, well, you don't know how the turtle got on top of the post, but you know it didn't get there by itself. And what happens then is what always happens with these kind of woke ideologies is it ends up backfiring and actually making the situation worse, because now people who do want to be misogynists, like you obviously, they point to someone like Pocahontas,
Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth Warren, thank you. They point to someone like her and say, see, women shouldn't be in these positions.
Yeah.
No. That woman shouldn't be in that position of power.
It's embarrassing.
It is. It's humiliating. But there are incredibly competent women. And if I can segue for a second, what's her name? Christine... The
news. I've got her in here. What's her name? Caroline Lever.
Caroline, thank you.
She's 27.
What a tour de force. Now, that is a competent woman.
Correct.
What was really interesting, though...
She was a prepared,
she was well
woman.
prepared.
She was
across the topics. She's got confidence. She's got sass where she needs it, and yet remains professional. That was a masterclass.
We're jumping all over my notes here.
Okay, no, but I want to stick on this for just 1 second, because it does relate to all of this. That's what a competent woman looks like. And yet, what happens on The View,
I cannot. I just don't even want to give them airtime.
Bitter Bihar, as she calls herself Joy, but that's, I think, a misnomer. I think Bitter should be her name. Bitter Bihar is sitting there saying, she only got that because in Trump's opinion, she looks like a 10.
I couldn't know. Was it her or Whoopi that said that?
No, that was Joy Bihar. And I go, you are a bitter woman who has gotten to where you are on DEI type favoritism, and you can't handle the fact that there are women out there that do deserve the job, that are competent.
I would argue this is just the Democrats showing, or the left showing their hand. This is how they've always been, and they always will be. They are the ultimate race baiters. They are the ultimate bigots. They are those who they tell you to fear. And you see that time and time again. I mean, RFK's in there talking about toxins in food, carcinogens in food, malpractice in the health industry, all at the hands of Big Pharma. And these people, all of the Democrat senators are sitting there arguing that we do not want to investigate it.
Yeah.
You know there is a chronic health crisis. You know that obesity has gone through the roof. You know autoimmune issues are going through the roof. You know vaccines are causing injuries. It is not bad to say so, but they are sitting there point blank gaslighting you to your face, telling you that no, there's nothing here. And then instead they try and flip it, they try and project it, and try and get a gotcha moment so they can be like, ha, he's a Nazi, or ha, he's a conspiracy theorist.
What's fascinating to me is that that's almost the 15-second soundbite culture that we blame on the nightly news being transferred into politics now, where these guys are sitting there and instead of actually doing their jobs, they're trying to get that clip, they're trying to get that thing that's going to go viral. And when they come up against someone who really is prepared, and this is one of the things that's always fascinated me, I've had people try and debate me over the years, not online, I wish it had been actually, because I'd love to have it on record, but I've had people literally stop me in the street and they want to have an argument with me about whatever. And they pick the time, they pick the place, they pick the topic, and yet they're the one that leaves. Very quickly, usually. And there's one particular instance I remember, this long-haired, dreadlocked guy in Fitzroy. He looked like Fitzroy. If Fitzroy was a person, he was Fitzroy. Long dreadlocks, hemp clothing,
from a mile away,
riding a tricycle with a wicker basket in the back, selling homebrewed beer. I'm not making this up, but if Fitzroy was a person,
stereotypes exist for a reason.
He sees me as he comes riding past. I'm just walking along. He calls out my name, and I sort of brace for action. Like, is this guy going to try and beat me up, or is he going to say hi and tell me he loves my work? I don't know. I'm in Fitzroy though, so presumably he probably doesn't love my work. He comes up and he wants to have an argument with me about climate change. And literally all he had was talking points that he got off a Friends of the Earth type of flyer. He had no depth at all. And I was able to then actually start to go into depth, and very quickly he bailed. And that's what we watch happening at things like this RFK. And it just amazes me that these senators can come along thinking, oh, I've got a gotcha question. And it's this deep. They've got no depth. They've got no research behind it.
Exactly.
And RFK does, because he spent his entire life being challenged. He's had to justify his positions his entire life. So of course he wipes the floor with it.
I think this is why those in the conservative or the libertarian movement are wiping the floor with people, because we've been up against it for so long. We've had to really refine our arguments. We've had to sharpen our knife, so to speak. So now when push comes to shove, these people have had the benefit of the doubt and the benefit of the fashion being on their side.
They are bringing a dildo to a gunfight. It's not going well for them.
I just got the best visual, and I'm not going to tell you what I just thought. I'll be banned on YouTube. But so we're talking about RFK and why they don't want him confirmed. We've got to talk about the lobbyists. We've got to talk about Big Pharma and the incentives to Bernie Sanders, to Elizabeth Warren. That's all coming out. And what I loved, and I said this to you when I picked you up from the train, was that the thing I'm enjoying most about this is that the legacy media or mainstream media cannot get a grip on these narratives quick enough to be able to come up with their version before it's all gone up on X and it's already immediately dispelled. They stuck on the Elon is a Nazi thing for about 3 days. And in that time, it was executive order after executive order, all these things being rolled out, and on X, the conversation is flowing. People are already talking about it, dispelling any rumors, and then the legacy media is like, but Elon's a Nazi.
And this is the thing that I said when Trump was elected. I said he has to go hard, because if you try and be nice and try not to put people offside and bring everyone with you on the journey, it bogs down. You get nowhere. So this is exactly what Trump needed to do. It is exactly what he's doing, and I'm frankly loving it. We've talked about that. But when it comes to these Senate confirmations and someone like RFK, it actually goes deeper than just the fact that so many senators are in the pockets of Big Pharma, although they are. That's an open secret if ever there was one. It's also that under RFK, there's a risk of accountability. They are terrified that he is competent, not that he's a crazy whatever. They are afraid that he's competent and that they're going to get held accountable. That's what's actually put fear into them.
I have to wonder this. And I mean, look, we're in this having a look at it all day, every day. You're normies. And I don't say that to be disparaging. I say that just to refer to people.
Our beloved normies.
Yeah, just people who aren't necessarily watching this stuff all day, every day. When you see those clips from Parliament, like that's something that I've always hated about Australian politics, where they're screaming at each other in Parliament. It just makes me go, these are outpaid elected officials. You see that in the Senate, they're trying to get the got your clips. You see the incompetence coming from the Democrats and the way that they're trying to scream down RFK, and he sits there composed, waiting to speak. And before he even gets his answer out, they're like, you're not even trying to answer the question. He's like, I'm trying to answer. If you're not going to answer, we'll move on to the next one. You can see the aggression in their approach, and that only comes from someone who's underprepared. You're not acting like that if you know what you're doing.
You should never ask a question that you don't already know the answer to. And if they're afraid of the answer, it means that they know that they haven't got something on the other side of that. They know that whatever comes back at them, they are not equipped to deal with.
On a side note, who killed JFK and RFK and MLK?
Don't know. Pretty sure when it comes to MLK, that was all fair because that was very public. It was shot right there, and I believe my memory might be failing me. That's a question without notice. Thank you, Carly. I appreciate that.
Segue.
Look, I have no idea. So there's a friend of mine, Dr. Paul Monk. He was a analyst for the Department of for the Defence Industry Organisation, and has worked in thinking, literally in the sort of meta-analysis thinking. And he runs workshops on how to think for massive corporates, for government, for all of that. I mean, government obviously hasn't had enough of his workshops because they need to think a lot better. They don't think very well. But one of his workshops is actually on the RFK assassination.
Okay.
And he takes people through step by step absolutely everything that was known prior to the declassification that I think hasn't happened yet. It's been officially, it's been signed off. But,
yeah.
I mean, that's just going to fuel more rumours. What are they doing between now and March? Like, why delay it? Just do it. Anyway, and he makes a very compelling case for why it did happen the way that the official narrative says that it happened. I have not looked into it myself.
Okay.
I'll be honest, I don't much care.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because most of the people involved are dead in any case. And I know there are other people looking into it very, very deeply, so I'm not going to spend time on it.
I'm fascinated by this because it's a cultural phenomenon, right?
Sure.
Like, was it the CIA? Was it an inside job? Was it really Lee Harvey Oswald?
I could believe that it was Lee Harvey Oswald and a CIA inside job.
And I think the interesting thing about this, like, I mean, enough time has passed now, but when you've got a now sitting president who has recently had assassination attempts, it brings up the same conversation. Which was also
probably the CIA.
I agree. Yeah. And I think what needs to be done here is the dismantling of the integrity of these agencies, these three little agencies. You know, they're often regarded as like these institutions where they could do no wrong. These are the people that are all seeing, they're all knowing.
The presumption of righteousness is in their favour.
And I think what releasing those files will show is either incompetence, it's either corruption, or it's, worse, domestic terrorism.
Yeah.
But what we'll see from that is like the American people are now starting to realise the people that you uphold as these, amazing, altruistic bastions of morality are just as flawed as each and every one of us, if not more so.
What's hilarious to me, though, is it's like, have you not watched a Hollywood thriller? Like watch Conspiracy Theory or watch Enemy of the State or watch any of these. Like, every single one of these movies, there's a bad actor inside one of these agencies.
There's a mole.
Like, this isn't some concept that we're not used to. But where I think we're headed with this is actually moving beyond the idea that these things are the consequence of a bad person within a good agency. And I think we're approaching the libertarian idea, which is actually these agencies are irredeemable.
Yes.
And they just need to be gotten rid of.
Yeah.
And in a way that kind of fuels my lack of concern as to whether or not we ever get the true details of the RFK assassination as one, for instance. Because for as long as the cultural narrative is, well, we can't trust the CIA, whether it was Lee Harvey Oswald or not, whether the CIA were involved or not, the whole thing's been completely incompetently mishandled by them. They either failed to protect the president or they killed the president, and no matter which way you go, they shouldn't continue to exist as an organisation. And as long as we're headed in that direction, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because there's obviously a lot of pushback, and we're going to go on to that in a second. But I want to segue into Hollywood because we just talked about, all these movies. It's hiding in plain sight. But we would be amiss if we did not jump on this one. And this is billionaire with a B, Selena Gomez coming out crying hysterically, showing empathy for the deportations.
I can't even, it moved me to tears.
There is nothing that I find more utterly profound than a billionaire trying to resonate with us people.
What a moment that was.
I didn't know how to think until, thankfully, Selena Gomez told me how to think.
I didn't realise she was such a superb actress. It just, look, whenever I'm feeling emotional about a topic,
I make sure my phone is set up so I can cry.
The first thing I do is grab exactly.
Me, it was the one children. It was really emphasising that children were. But anyway.
So for me, she has every right to speak on the topic. She has every right to speak in whatever form or format she sees best. She's obviously done that because that's what she's decided she wanted to do as a contribution to the debate. Do I really think she's actually that emotional? No, of course I don't, because I have a brain. Does she care? Maybe she does genuinely care. I don't want to dismiss the idea that maybe she cares, but what I will dismiss is the idea that her opinion matters more than yours, more than mine, more than anyone else's on the street. The fact that she's a celebrity, the fact that she's got money, the fact that she's got an audience amplifies her voice more, but doesn't actually make her opinion any more valuable.
The fascinating thing about her is she is one of the most followed people on social media. She has 427 million followers.
Yeah, wow.
Like, that's obscene. That's 500 million people.
Yeah.
Not to say that they all see it, but when something like this, it's not just viral, it is global. It's going around the world 400 times a second.
Yeah.
And the thing that I find really interesting, I mean, we can sit here and mock her, and I don't think you should mock people for expressing empathy. I think, if that's how you feel, that's fine.
I think she genuinely feels that way, but I do think she was amping it up.
What I thought was worth discussing was this bloated sense of self-importance that comes from people who are established in Hollywood. She's someone who's become a billionaire through her skincare company, thanks to her Disney roles, thanks to her music career, and now through that there's this sense of entitlement. Like, I understand little people, it's let the big people speak now. I being the billionaire, I being the celebrity.
Let me play devil's advocate though, because if celebrities didn't speak, I mean, there's people going to celebrities and people with, I use the term celebrity loosely, people with an audience. There's people coming to me regularly in my inbox. I've got a tiny audience, but there's, why aren't you talking about this issue? Why aren't you talking about that issue, right? So it is legitimate for someone with a large audience to say, well, I'm going to use the fact that I have a large audience to draw attention to something that I care about.
Yeah.
Where I tend to take exception is where someone doesn't draw attention to the issue, they draw attention to themselves.
Correct.
The issue becomes a prop for them rather than them a servant to the issue.
Correct. And if you're going to do that, there's always, like, these people have PR agencies, they have managers, they have people around them to make sure that their public persona is carefully crafted.
I would guarantee you they were in the room when she recorded
and that was going to be my point. Yeah. There is no way this was just an off-the-cuff, hang on a minute, this is how I'm feeling, I'm overwhelmed. And I contrast it to my own viral moment during COVID, where I was so dejected by the announcement, I cannot remember which one it was. It was either 4 or 5.
4 something.
Whatever.
Like that, yeah.
Mid-2021. And I heard the news, we were going into lockdown at 8 o'clock at night, and I had already been speaking about COVID up until this point. And I just put my camera in front of me and I spoke to it. And then I reckon at about the 12 or 13 minute mark, I started to break down because I was overwhelmed with emotion. Didn't think anything of it, put it up. And I only had a following of, I think, maybe like 9,000 people. I didn't have a big following. Yeah. But enough people who followed me saw it, felt they compelled to then share it, and then it went like a wildfire. And the reason I contrast the two is Selena knows she has that audience. She knows that anything she puts on her Instagram or her social media will be instantly clicked on and discussed, and it will go wild. There's no way she just randomly was like, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm going to do this, and then was so shocked with the backlash. It was choreographed, whereas my viral moment, like, I'm fuck all no one. Do you know what I mean? Like, no one knew who I was.
But that doesn't invalidate her from doing it. But I think it does allow us to have a certain amount of cynicism. It was
poorly done. I would say if you wanted to come out and say, all right, I'm a billionaire, I also happen to have 500 million followers on social media, I want to speak up on this, but I want to do it in a way that people will listen. Yeah. Crying on the internet is just,
See, what's interesting is men have always had that as our experience. No one cares when a man cries. And a few do try on social media from time to time, and it doesn't usually go very well for them, but it's a very, very rare thing. Women have enjoyed an enormous amount of power in the form of tears. A woman crying is a tremendously powerful thing, and it should always have remained that way. A woman in distress, a damsel in distress, ought to trigger that protective part in all of us, but especially in men. But because it's been weaponized and cynically used to manipulate us and try and control public opinion, it's losing its power.
Yes.
And I don't think that's a good thing.
Yeah. I agree. And look, I'd be amiss if I didn't point out, like, I put up a video about youth crime in November. And I put it up, I think, about 48 hours after the home invasion happened. And I was distressed in that because I just had my home broken into, albeit for me to express emotion after a traumatic event. Yeah. And I was mercilessly mocked for that as well. Like, here she is again, fake tears, whatever. And I'm like, look, you can say what you want. You can argue that black and blue. But the point is, there's a time and a place to be upset. And if it's directly impacting you, sure, cry, upset. Those two things that I cried on the internet. I say this because I know my haters will be like,
but you cried on the internet.
Correct. Yeah. And like, that's because it happened to me directly. It impacted me specifically. Selena lives in a gargantuan mansion. And has she opened that to the deportees? Has she employed the deportees? Has she done anything with her own money and her own power to impact it? And it was actually, it's key that we mentioned something that she said, like, I don't know what I can do. I can't do anything. Well, you can.
Yeah.
You unequivocally can. You have power, you have authority, you have an audience, and you have financial means. You can do a lot.
And so this is what I mean. She's using them as a prop to demonstrate her own virtue at no cost to her.
Correct.
She's not actually using her influence and power and reach to do anything meaningful for them.
And this is another really good way to point out how culture is changing, because traditionally celebrities and things were held on a pedestal, regardless of who they are or what they are.
Yep.
But now you're seeing it wasn't just the right who came after Selena, it was her own left-wing people who are exposing her. You know, it's eat the rich, these billionaires, they're completely out of touch. And so you've got two different narratives now operating at the same time. And two things can be true at once. You know, I think she was self-focused and disingenuous with that approach. But also her own people who agree with her are now pointing out the fact that, hang on a minute, you're a billionaire.
Yeah, you can do something.
You can do a lot.
Don't sit here and say you can't do anything.
And you're using tears on the internet for what purpose? And I just thought it was really interesting because the collective has changed. People are now looking at those established people going, you don't speak for us anymore.
Yeah.
You know, you've lost your power.
Yeah.
But talking about new stars and rising stars, we were going to talk about Caroline Leavitt.
Yes.
Her bold debut was amazing, and I did see a clip this morning that I was just like, this summarises it perfectly. Out with the old, in with the new, and obviously contrasting it to, what's her name? Kiera Jean-Pierre or whatever her name is. Yeah. And look, I'm not going to sit here and dump on another woman and dump on her, but her opening statement, KJP's opening statement, was all about her being a DEI hire. I'm a woman, I'm queer, I'm black, I'm the first to hold all three titles in this position. Yeah. And she had like a monologue about her. Yeah. Her opening monologue to the press at the beginning of her term was about herself. Caroline's come out going, hey, new faces, old faces, how you going? Trump's ready, Golden Age of America starts now. Yeah. It was not like, you know, it's so refreshing to see people not focus on themselves.
She did say one more very interesting thing in addition to that, which is that as of now, they're inviting bloggers, internet, rather than just the traditional media. You could become a White House press correspondent for the Oddcast.
Can you imagine?
That'd be awesome.
I reckon we should apply and just see what happens.
Well, my wife's told me to apply. She's like, you should apply. I'm like, how am I getting to Washington, D.C.? It's a long commute.
So far, the list of people who have applied is Alex Jones, James O'Keefe, Tim Pool, and we know that Jessica Krause from House and Habit was extended a personal invitation from Trump himself.
Yes.
And this, again, just points to a massive seismic culture shift because now people who have the means like this, I mean, if you guys look at this room, we've got 2 lights, 3 cameras, and a microphone. Yeah. It's not too hard to set this up. You just need to be brave enough to do it and put yourself out there. Yeah. And now, thanks to people like Joe Rogan, who sort of paved the way, you got Timcast, you got House and Habit, all of these people, all these independent people, even people who've left traditional media like Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson. Everyone now is going, well, hang on a minute. I'm going to use my platform and my voice. This is how I feel about things. And it's not about trying to persuade people. It's about just having a conversation and opening up more people to have a seat at the table. And I think by extending that invitation to independent media or podcasters to come into the White House, that is going to be like a dagger to the heart of legacy media.
I was trying to sleep last night. And I couldn't, which was ridiculous because I should have had a wonderful sleep last night. Everything was perfect. Everything was set up for it, and I just couldn't sleep. And for reasons unknown, my asshole brain said, hey, do you remember that time when Donald Trump was feeding the fish in Japan next to the Japanese Prime Minister? And the media made this massive song and dance about him dumping the remaining fish food and saying, oh, insensitive and culturally inappropriate, and he's offended the Japanese and blah, blah, blah. And then you watch the full video. And yes, they're both carefully shaking it up, blah, blah, and then the Japanese Prime Minister goes, dump. Yeah. With the remainder of his. And Trump goes, oh, okay, dump. Right. So every single journalist that propagated that lie knew it was a lie. No, a moment's research would have proved without doubt that was a lie. But the way it used to work, even just those few years ago, was that the lie would spread around the world and then the truth would catch up. Yeah. But what's happening, and you've said it yourself, what's happening now is that social media are beating the mainstream media to the punch. The truth is spreading around the world and the lie is trying to play catch up. And this move, I think, on the part of having access to the White House press room is just going to accelerate that even further, where the capacity for the mainstream media to craft their lies is now almost gone.
What I find really interesting too is prior to like literally the last couple of days, independent journalists or podcaster was a pejorative.
Yes.
It was used to discredit anyone who was critically thinking, who was going out of their own, who wasn't following the leftist trope. And what I find fascinating about this, like, you know, House and Habit does a lot of this. She'll share articles from the New York Times, New Yorker Magazine, The Cut, what's it called? Vanity Fair. And they use the word journalist in inverted commas, and saying that they are the gatekeepers to journalism. Now, I think we've talked about this before. You can go get a degree, all that sort of stuff, yada, yada. Not to just, like, detract from a really well done job of journalism.
Yeah.
But having conversations, you don't need a degree to have those. You don't need a degree to sit down at the table and be able to look at things and with your own eyes and go, well, hang on, this is how I feel about it and this is how I feel about it. And they're now using that pejorative of independent or podcaster as if it's some kind
YouTuber.
of... Yeah.
But again, this is a theme for the show. They've done it to themselves. I used to reflect so I started in 2009. I'm kind of the OG YouTuber, Australian political commentator. I'm not aware of there having been anyone before me. YouTube only really became a public video platform in 2007. And by 2009, I was on it doing my thing. And I used to feel really uncomfortable about it. I'm like, but I'm not a journalist. I'm just a forklift driver who did a video, and then people said, hey, you, keep talking, do more. And so I did. But over time, I had to process that and think, well, what's going on here? And I realized if the media were doing their job, there would be no room for me. If there is room for me, if there is an audience for me, if people are looking at me going, you, keep going, then it tells me that the media aren't doing their job. And so they've brought this on themselves.
And again, you're seeing this rise of meritocracy in a lot of these industries. Joe Rogan is a perfect example. He wouldn't be Joe Rogan if there wasn't room for him. The market would decide whether or not there's room for him. And the reality is people are disillusioned with legacy media. They know they're not being told the full story. And this happened, you posted it today. The New Yorker posted a photo saying the Cruel Kids Club, deliberately excluding the people of colour that were in the frame. It's classic. It's like they did the meme, you know, the people stabbing each other?
One of whom was a co-organiser of the event. Right, this is not some token diversity hire black person.
The thing that's getting me, am I giving people too much credit here? I'm like, they know this. They know the internet exists. They know that can be dispelled immediately on X, but they still do it anyway.
So they are doing their own version of clickbait and click harvesting. And their business model is very different to an online business model. They need to sell physical magazines and perhaps online subscriptions to a dedicated audience that just wants to hear, you know, it's what they say, that people don't want to hear what you have to say. They want to hear what they have to say come out of your mouth. And so these magazines, this legacy media, the one big advantage they do have is they've cultivated a big pool of people who like them because they keep hearing their opinions come out of that masthead's mouth. And there is a business model that can survive for a period of time on continuing to basically fleece those people. Keep feeding them what they want. That will diminish over time, but these mastheads are sitting there going, we have no future if we don't just keep feeding this small and diminishing pool of people that still listen to us. So they are.
Yeah, and a lot of these people, like, you know, for those of us who don't watch MSNBC, I don't watch it, I just see the clips on X.
You don't?
No.
It's not on just 24-hour rotation in your home?
I see them pop up on X and I just go, I'll watch it for a minute, and as soon as I hear the squawking, I'm like, off. You know, whether it's Joy Behar or Sunny Hostin or it's Rachel Maddow, Joy Reid, you watch these people just continuing on the same nonsense, and they're doubling down. Like, MSNBC has cut the wages of all their anchor people, and yet continuing to do the same thing. Like, it's a race to the bottom. You know you are going to die soon, but they're like, no, I'm going to die on this hill. I'm like, oh, great to you.
And they will, and they'll take their career with them, and they won't be missed.
What's his name? Jim Acosta just got fired by CNN.
What a shame.
Yeah,
I cried all night. Yeah, that's what kept me awake, just if you want to know.
And back on that, just to round out that discussion, when I say meritocracy is being reinstalled again, you can see this playing out because Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo both had massive anchor positions during the COVID years. Don Lemon, and then they will tag team. Chris Cuomo, even though he will never apologise, which he should, which would help his career dramatically, he's now got a job with Newsmax. He's back doing anchoring. No, he's not at the same level he was at CNN, but he's doing something to redeem himself. He's gone on Patrick Bet David's podcast. And look, I don't mind Chris. I think his heart's in the right place as far as like he wants to be a journalist. I think he's not quite red-pilled yet, but he might get there.
Yeah, he's working on it.
Don Lemon, on the other hand, has gone and tried to do the independent thing, and the market is sorting him out. No one's interested.
Yeah.
There is no space for you.
There's just not a lot of talent there.
Yeah.
Look at someone like Tucker Carlson, rose to the top of the cable TV game as the biggest Fox News host, which was also the biggest news show in the world, on merit. Then Fox said, "Oh well, we're going to scotch him because he's upsetting our advertisers, which is pharmaceutical companies mostly, our donors exactly." And then he turns around and goes and becomes the world's biggest now podcaster. He's the one person challenging Joe Rogan for the number one spot. Why? Well, because he got to the top on merit in the first place, and so you can take away the cable news network, and his merit still shows. It still shines through.
You got to wonder though, like, is there anyone in the legacy media like looking at this going, "Shit, we did the wrong thing"?
Oh,
like,
lots.
Lots.
But can you imagine how Blockbuster felt, towards the end of its existence about not buying Netflix? Right,
Kodak Film.
Yeah, Kodak Film, etc. Like once they have that realization, it's too late. They're already being eaten alive.
Now, I want to go into something which, may or may not interest a lot of people, but I think it's really important because we talked about shame. And we've had Pete Hegseth, who is now the Secretary of Defense, if I got that right, has stripped Mark Milley?
Yes, the general. Yeah.
Of his, not only his, his security detail, but also his clearance. And has removed his portraits from all government buildings.
Yeah.
This is exactly the precedent we need to set. This is people who know you're going to be demoted. Yep. We're going to highlight where you went wrong.
Yep.
And I don't think it's necessarily, they've talked about being pardoned. The political warfare, taking people to court like they did with Trump, that's one way of doing it. Mm-hmm. This is a smarter game. Mm-hmm. We're not going to come after you legally, but we're going to make you embarrassed.
Yep. There's different ways to do it. And this is the point that I've made time and time again. If you make it impossible for people to hold you accountable within the system, i.e. getting a pardon, then you are incentivizing people to find other ways to do it. And this is all we're looking at here. Ultimately, the president is the commander-in-chief of the US Armed Forces. He can do these things. When you have a concerted effort by the intelligence agencies, members of the armed forces, etc., to destroy through lawfare a former president, as Trump was at the time, with all the Russia stuff, that whole brief that the dossier, all of that stuff. Of course there's going to be consequences when you then lose. Like, you try and take somebody out and you fail, and that person comes back to being the commander-in-chief of the organisation that you work for. Yes, sorry, you're not getting off scot-free.
Well, that's that pendulum coming back. And, I think they genuinely thought they could cheat their way into another election with Kamala winning, and, that would be it. Yeah. That you're done.
Well, you saw with the WEF, they had a panel on stage. I put the video up on my socials, where they were actually literally acknowledging, hey, we have to acknowledge Trump won and we lost.
Yeah.
We thought Trump was dead politically. We thought he was gone politically. We phew, he's gone. We'll never have to see him again. We have to accept that he's done the impossible and come back from the dead.
Yeah.
He won, we lost. They're literally saying it amongst themselves on
stage. The people have won, and this is what I mean. It's a glorious time because, yes, it's going to take a while to dismantle everything and all the truth to come out and all the dust to settle. But we've won, guys. You can breathe a sigh of relief.
I wouldn't go that far. We have won an enormous victory, but the war goes on.
Yeah.
This is a war that will never end. This is a war that was going before we were born. It'll go long after we're dead.
I think we can safely say that DEI and woke is dead.
DEI and wokeism is dead for probably the next 20 to 30 years before it will come back in some new form.
Well, I think I said this on a previous podcast. When we talk, we're going to go into the trans stuff in a second. This is just the same thing we saw in the early 1920s. This is eugenics just rebranded.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
It is. And these sorts of social contagions and social movements, they do come and go. No victory is forever, but we can acknowledge this is an enormous turning point in history and a very, very good one. And we're winning a lot of battles at the moment, and that's good.
Before we move on to the transgender topic, though, we've got to talk about Fauci and the perfect Trump sentence that came out about he's made his own money, he's a very rich man, he can pay for his own security.
Yes.
I think his security detail was $15 million per annum.
Something like that. And, I've always said, for you can go right back to my work in 2009, I've always said nothing says trust the science like a presidential pardon. That's, if there's one thing that I want my scientists to have after they say, I am the science, trust the science. I need a presidential pardon.
Yeah.
That's a logical progression.
Why does a doctor need a security detail?
Well, probably because lots of people are dead because of him. That would be just hypothetically spitballing.
Don't you talk common sense to me.
I know, right? But it is extraordinary to think that there are still people that haven't been jarred out of that belief.
There's still people getting the COVID vaccine, the boosters.
Yeah.
Actually, I saw it today. It was on something. I will say it's good that a lot of left stuff comes into my X feed, but God, it's jarring when it does. And I can't remember the account or who said it, but they were talking about the efficacy of the COVID vaccine and saying it's proven safe and effective. I'm like, where have you been, bro?
We're literally seeing now inquiries being opened up in the UK again into the rise in heart failures and heart conditions and so forth. That's been getting some media coverage recently. We know so much now of what was called conspiracy theories early on. We know that to be true, and yet there are still true believers out there. But I have to remind myself, there are people that escaped from Germany and went to Argentina at the end of the Second World War, and they grew old and died believing that Hitler was right and he should have won the war. Right? Just because something is incredibly obvious to the rest of the world doesn't mean that everyone has that epiphany. There are going to be people that will grow old and die firmly believing that Dan Andrews saved their life and hundreds of thousands of Victorian lives, and nothing will convince them otherwise.
And I think we'll see the same with this trans movement as well. There are going to be people who will die on this hill saying it's saving children's lives. And the thing about the trans thing is I believe it's a social contagion. I take no hesitation in saying that. Not to say that there aren't the odd person who does have proper gender dysphoria. I don't think that's, hyperbolic to say. But this massive influx of young children believing that they're born in the wrong bodies and they need puberty blockers, that is indoctrination. That is child abuse. And this is something that needs to be smacked down in every conceivable level of government, in every community-run organisation, in your home, in the state schools, in the private schools. And we're already seeing Trump came out today and he's mandated from K to 12 that there will no more CRT in state schools or federal funded schools.
Critical race theory for those that aren't in the weeds the way that we are.
And the issue about this trans stuff, and the reason I get so angry about it is like when you're a consenting adult and you have got a fully formed frontal lobe and you can make decisions, fuck around and find out. Drink the bleach. I don't care, right? But if you are doing that to a child who doesn't know to not cross the road when the car's coming, and but they can somehow have the personal authority to say, hey, I'm in the wrong gender, when they don't even know what it means.
We can't let them have alcohol because it might do damage to the development of their brain cells, but we'll let them have their breasts cut off. Or become a hermaphrodite. This is the other thing is people love to say, but there's always been transgender people. Yes, and we had words for them. There's a castrato, there's a hermaphrodite. There are various sort of different forms of castration for a male that has different terms according to exactly which bits they've cut off. There are androgynous people and have been through all the time. They're approximately 0.1% or less than 0.1% of the population. Then in addition to those people that are medically that way from the very, very beginning are the people who might be confused about their gender or what have you, which was another very, very small fraction of the population. And for the people who exist in either of those two genuine categories, I've got all the time in the world for you, right? If you need some support, if you need friends, if you need work, if you need whatever, I'm there for you so that you can live a dignified life. What I'm not there for is adults and parents doing Munchausen by proxy. Oh, my child is this. This is Munchausen by proxy. You need to have sympathy for me. Look at how virtuous I am because I'm taking proper care of my child who has gender dysphoria. This is manipulation. This is child abuse. It is coming to an end, thankfully. I am actually looking forward, and this is not something I often would say, and it's not something I say gleefully, I am looking forward to children suing their parents and hopefully getting their parents into prison for child abuse.
I would agree.
To them when they were too young to understand what was being done to them.
And, the thing that they say never happens so frequently, but because of the previous American administration, it was squashed and, never discussed. Whereas I mentioned in an earlier podcast the gay couple that adopted the two children, who then used them for orgies to sodomize them. Those cases aren't few and far between. Unfortunately, they are all too common. Not to say that abuse doesn't happen on the other side of the fence. That's not at all what I'm saying. But there seems to be a direct correlation here between people who have gender dysphoria, who are pushing trans onto children, and then sexual abuse allegations. Yeah. That is a big one.
If your sexual identity is the most interesting thing about you, you are not an interesting person.
Yeah.
Please just go and find a life that makes you, where you have other things to talk about. If you know, and this is where, for example, people get upset. Oh, why do you have a problem with drag queens reading story time to kids? Well, I have a problem with anyone whose presentation to the world is a sexual one.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want anyone I don't want strippers reading to my kids. Trans or not isn't the point.
Yeah.
They can be dressed in their own gender. I don't want someone dressed like a stripper reading stories to kids.
Well, it's that heightened sexuality that's just like explicitly put onto children at such a young age. Like, they're not even aware of this stuff yet, but it's the adults that get off on it. I don't know what the word is for it, but the adults get off on parading themselves in front of the children. You see it in the pride parades, and there's one last year, and I'm so sorry for anyone that hadn't seen the story, but it's a real thing. It was in San Francisco, and it was some kind of pride march parade, and the degeneracy that was on full display. People who were walking around butt naked, pissing, can I say that on YouTube? Peeing onto a person in a kiddies pool as they were floating around in it, and then openly, like, having blowjob competitions in front of children. I'm sorry, there is no way you can justify that.
That should be go directly to jail, do not pass go. But what's really interesting to me is strippers don't want to be reading story time school stories to kids.
Yeah.
Right? They're not trying to.
Yeah.
Other people that work in sex work or have a sexualized identity aren't trying to do that. It's drag queens and gender benders. A drag queen by definition is a male wearing a women's outfit, wearing woman face. These are the people that want to get in front of our kids. What is it about that particular sexual orientation that wants to be in front of the kids so much?
The other thing I would argue, and this is sort of like a side point here, but this is something that I'm quite fixated on. Children have a finite amount of time, and they have a finite attention span. If the majority of their time is spent obsessing over their gender, their sexuality, and how they show up physically in the world, that gives them no time to develop skills that will actually serve them well as adults. If at school all they're learning about, and I'm sorry, I'm throwing the Aboriginal stuff in here as well, the BLM stuff, Ukraine, Palestine, the whole woke chest. If that is all they're fixating on in schools, when do they learn math? When do they learn about social studies? When do they learn about things that can serve them well? And it's not to say that those social justice issues don't matter. What it means is children only have a small amount of time to focus on things that will set them up for success. When are they going to learn how to write a resume? When are they going to learn basic communication, how to pick up a phone and have a conversation?
Well, this also comes back to what you're studying, though, because when are they going to learn the skills that will give them a justified sense of self-confidence? We tell them, oh, you're perfect just the way you are, and we base that on, oh, but you're a person of colour, you're a woman, you're a minority, you're an oppressed this, you're neurodivergent. We give them these things to hang on to. What's interesting is these things are the things that they're being told they have no ability to control. These are what would be referred to as the unchangeables. So I personally am of the opinion that you have no right to take pride in something that you didn't have a hand in accomplishing. I don't have any right to be proud of being white. Nor does a black person have a right to be proud of being black. You were born in the body you were born into. What's to be proud of? Same with being male, being female, any of that. It's just absolute pure nonsense. What I should be proud of is my work ethic. My attitude, the way that I treat people, the way that I provide for my family, the way that I raise my kids, the way that I serve my community, my ability to do things that might be better than the average or even extraordinary potentially if I work hard enough and long enough. Those are the changeable attributes about us. Those are the things we should be proud of. And those are the things that kids aren't having their time put into because all their time's being taken up.
And you see this. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time on TikTok, but you see bits and pieces of it. And I'll speak about something that happened to me recently. There's this chick who I don't know, who I've never met and had absolutely nothing to do with, who made a video on me to get clicks. And it was all of these things that she tried to like grab off different things to paint a narrative. And she did it to get virality and get clicks and whatnot. And I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, cool, you got your clicks, you got some followers, whatever. Now what? Now what? How did that translate into money for you? How did that translate into you furthering yourself? You're obsessing about me. I'm over here building a podcast, building a YouTube, working in my business. And this is my frustration. I don't need everyone to like me, but I want to incentivize everyone to go work on yourself. Stop being so fixated on people who ideologically disagree with you. Stop being so fixated on things that you cannot change. You cannot change your gender. You cannot change your sexuality as much as you want to think that you can. And you can sit there and you can argue with me as much as you like. What you can change is your skill set. What you can change is how much knowledge you have,
and
the way you show up in the world, and your attitude, the way you present yourself. You know, you can change your financial position. You can change your job. And that is where people aren't focused at the moment. And this is my frustration. We have a a self-esteem crisis. And it's not just Australia, it's worldwide, particularly with this young generation. I don't think we can get Gen Z on track. I want to think we can. I do. But I sat down.
They're too far gone. Let them go.
They are.
Skip them, move on to the next generation.
I was catching up with a girlfriend yesterday who has a really big company and she cannot find staff. The staff that she finds, I'm not going to say who she is or what industry she's in, but she's getting the people who are qualified for the job, and they will sit there and go, well, that's not how we were taught at university, therefore we can't do it. And it's like, well, university is irrelevant. This is the business. This is the job. This is how it's done.
So there was a very, very bright up-and-comer Gen Z, had been the top of their class all the way through school, graduated, got a full ride, full scholarship through the most prestigious university, graduated university, absolute top of the class, was getting job offers, six-figure salary job offers from all over the place before they'd even graduated, and accepted, of course, the most prestigious offer that they got, showed up to day one at work, having been absolutely the top of the top all the way through their life. And was excited to see, corner office, big view, secretary, all the rest of it. And this old person comes out, I'm the owner of the company, lovely to meet you, very impressive results at school, let me show you around. And they start walking around and meeting all the different people, and all the while the new graduates, where's my office, where's my, and eventually at the very end of the tour, after they've been walking around for 2 hours meeting people, the owner of the company walks up to a door, and the young graduate goes, this is it, this will be it, this is my chance, this is my office. And he opens the door and it's a broom closet. And the owner pulls out a broom and hands it to the graduate and says, right, I need you to start sweeping at that end and work your way through and let me know when you get to the other end and I'll show you where to put the rubbish. And the graduate says, excuse me, I'll have you know, I graduated at the top of my class in the most prestigious university. And the owner said, oh, that's right, I'm so sorry, I forgot. You went to university? Let me show you how to use the broom. That's the reality of education today.
And the thing is, too, if everyone has these degrees, whether it's an arts degree or whatever it is, how do you differentiate yourself? Do you know how you do it? Basic skills that they're not teaching you at school anymore.
The confidence to pick up the phone and have a phone conversation.
Yeah, and this is something. So when I was with my girlfriend yesterday, she had a staff member there who was helping out, and the staff member was early 20s. And I said to her, how do you feel about this conversation she's having? She's like, I agree with you. She's like, I've got 2 jobs and I'm at university. And she goes, I learn more here at this job than I do at my university. She goes, the only reason I'm doing uni is because I literally have to have the certification. She can't get the qualification otherwise. And she's like, I get so frustrated because I hear my own friends talk about, oh, it's too hard, oh, this and whatever, taking sick days. And she's like, it frustrates me. And I said to her, I looked at her and I said, you know what? You are going to be incredibly successful because you are doing one thing that your generation won't, and that is that you actually want to do it.
The difference between kids being raised with some discipline and taught to anchor their self-respect in their actual achievements and what they actually do, the difference between them and the rest in that Generation Z is going to be so vast.
Yeah.
It is. I kind of feel sorry for the kids that are being, frankly, neglected into a future of poverty, but they are kind of beyond save. It's like they're either going to figure it out and save themselves, or they can't be saved. Just let it go.
I had an argument with another girlfriend. I love giving you my anecdotes because this is real world shit that actually unfolds.
Yeah.
Another one of my girlfriends, who I would say is insanely generous to her child, and I made the comment, which in hindsight, it's probably not my place to say, and I admit that, but gave her child an obscenely priced thing for no reason, just like, hey, here's this very expensive thing. And I was like, mate, that's not a good thing. And she goes, oh, I can afford it. I want to give my child everything. And I was like, yeah, but she doesn't appreciate it. And then sure enough, a couple of weeks later, this very expensive thing is broken, right? And, and then the friend was complaining to me, oh, I broke it, whatever. And I was like, of course she did.
Yeah.
There's no value there. Yep. I'll tell you a story because I think it was one of those things that's like, oh my God, I look back now and I go, wow, that's really important. And so I was 14 and 9 months. I got my very first job at McDonald's. And I loved Macca's. By the way, I loved that job.
Yeah.
One of the best jobs I've ever had. And for whatever reason, we were playing Tiggy in the house. Tiggy, hide and seek, touch and go, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And we had like an old school homestead wooden door with stained glass panels in it.
Oh, yeah.
And
I think I see where this is
yeah,
going.
I was chasing the person to tag them, you're it. And the person pulled the door behind them and I put my hand through the stained glass door. My whole hand. Very expensive mistake. Also cut my arm up. And I had been begging my mum and dad for a pair of Oakley sunglasses. Do you remember those? Like,
oh, yeah. They're
hideous.
very fashionable, yes.
Hideous. But everyone in my high school had them. You had that or you had the Rip Curl or Quicksilver backpack. And if you didn't, you were basically dead to everyone.
Yeah.
And I was so desperate for those sunglasses. And this is like, 2001, 2002.
Sure.
They were $250 sunglasses.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money back then. And I remember I had just somehow convinced my parents to pay for them. And then all of a sudden that happens. My parents go, well, guess what? All your money is going towards fixing that. And I was furious. I was like, it was an accident. I didn't mean it. I've hurt myself. And my parents like, doesn't matter.
All of that can be true. You still owe us a
Correct.
Yeah.
And so I had to pay for that glass window to be fixed. And I, for the life of me, I can't remember what it was. And I remember hating my parents, hating them, being so angry because all I wanted was those sunglasses. And I can tell you now, it made me start to recognize that if you don't respect things, you'll be held accountable. And that means that you don't get the thing that you really want.
Well, I tell you though, Keynesian economists would have been very happy because broken window economics is what they're all about. But it's such an important thing. My son wanted a Nintendo Switch because one of his friends had a Nintendo Switch and he decided that he wanted it when he was, I think, still 5. We gave him job. We said, okay, you want to buy something, you want something nice, okay, it's $500.
Shit, are they that expensive?
Yeah, they're ridiculous. And so what we did was $1 for stacking the dishwasher, $1 for doing the washing machine, etc. And relatively generous when you think about it, how long it takes to actually do. I mean, for a kid that age, he could earn some decent. He could earn $4 or $5 a day just by being helpful around the house.
Yeah.
But that we gave him nothing. What I did was I said, when you've saved up enough, I will buy you a game as well. Yeah. Right? I will pay for a game.
I'll match it.
That's what I'll do. But he has to pay for the entire thing himself. Took him 2.5 years. He bought it. And guess what? He looks after it. Yeah. Because he saved up for 2.5 years. He knows how many loads of dishes he had to do to get that damn thing. And you're absolutely right. It's not about the Nintendo Switch. It's about the life skill that he carries with him. Yeah. Absolutely, and I think that's put me in good stead, whereas now, and this is something that the left has actually tried to disparage in a lot of those of us who are centre-right, is that we have really nice things because we have worked really hard for them. It's not materialism. It is not some obsession with flexing or wealth. It's, I have done X to result in Y, and I'm very proud of Y. And this is going to be my segue into youth crime. You go out of your way, like I wouldn't say I have a lot of possessions. I'm certainly not a minimalist. But everything that I have, I want to get the future-proof version of it. Or the best quality I can facilitate with my means. And whether that's the car, an iPad, a laptop, whatever. And, a perfect example is my Apple laptop. Anyone who's in... I know, don't judge me. Shut up. He's already rolling his eyes. Not an Apple fan myself.
This is like, I am outnumbered because now my partner's an Android too. So everyone's just going to be like...
Your partner's an Android? Wow, that's going to go... Man, your haters are going to have a heyday with that one. So
I sit here and I whinge about the price of Apple products and people will be like, just go across to Android. I will never.
Android's not much cheaper, I've got to be, because I've tried a bunch of different Android brands and I keep coming back to Samsung because there are some rubbish ones out there. And honestly, Samsung's no cheaper. They're no better.
I wouldn't even know how to turn an a Windows computer on.
I know how to turn an Apple computer off. Just throw it in the bay and walk away.
You're getting away from my point. Back to what I was saying. So, when I go to make I'm a graphic designer, I'm someone that needs the tech to do my job. Sure. And it's such an outlay. And when I was buying my computer, I think, 18 months, 2 years ago, something like that. I was looking at the prices and I was truly gobsmacked at how expensive they had become. To get the, the RAM that I wanted, to get the processor, to get the chip that I wanted, all that sort of stuff. And it was such an eye-watering sum. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I literally am not spending that money today. And I sat on it and thought about it. And then, of course, as Apple inevitably does, a new one came out. I was like, shit, okay, I need to buy this computer. I'm going to go do it. I went and invested in a model that I hope, fingers crossed, will last me at least 5 years, if not a couple more. And it should. And I have, and I future-proofed it. And obviously, with that laptop, I am very like, please don't, and then I spilled a cup of coffee on it, which is it's this random story. But now it's a very expensive laptop because I've since had to pay for the new hard drive. If anyone...
So we operate better on caffeine. Computers don't.
No. And just like a little bit of a story for you guys. Don't spill your coffee on your laptop.
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that.
Just in case anyone was wondering. That was a $1,500 expense I wasn't expecting. Turns out it didn't like it. But anyway, so now it's a very expensive laptop. And
it smells nice too.
That's what the guy said when he was fixing it. He opened it up, he's like, it smelled like good coffee though. I was like, yeah, I just made it. I didn't get to drink it. And my point about the laptop is now, like, I'm extra careful with it, and I had someone mocking me like, oh, Carl's in a laptop. I'm like, mate, this is how I do all of my work. This is how I make my money. This is how I pay for my livelihood. I have put so much effort into this. I've worked so hard to be able to afford this. Me showing care for it, me showing my appreciation, it's not materialism. It's actually respect.
But you'll notice when it comes to crime and people stealing, etc., there are people that object and say, "Oh, it's only a thing; it can be replaced," etc. Those people saying that tend to be the people that have gotten a lot for free. They're on welfare, or they've had
or don't have anything nice,
or don't have anything nice themselves. And what they don't understand, because they've never had to work that hard for anything in their life, is that it's actually not about the thing at all. It is about the years of your life that you spent getting that thing, or what that thing represents in terms of your ability to earn and provide for your family. It is what went into that thing and what that thing can do for you and what it needs to do for you in order for you to be able to continue living and providing for your family, etc. So it's way more than just a thing. And people say, "Oh, well, if you would hurt a criminal just to save a possession, well, you're morally bankrupt," etc. No, look, you come into my house and you start stealing my stuff, you're gonna have a bad day.
And that's going to be the segue into the next topic, which is youth crime in Victoria, which is just it's beyond out of control. I'm not sure what the escalation point is now. It is catastrophic. Just today, it was announced that a Brighton street, and I know everyone's going to roll your eyes. Oh, Brighton. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether this is in Brunswick, it's in Brighton, or it's out in freaking whoop nowhere. The fact is, these people's houses are being invaded by known criminals who keep doing it because there's no consequences. And if it happens to you, you'll be the first one to scream blue murder when it happens. And because they're in affluent suburbs, people are like, oh, poor rich people, just use your insurance. That's not the point. The psychological scars of having someone break into your home, you don't know if they've got a machete or not. Most of them do. It's the invasion. It's that violation. And then you carry that with you. But, we talk about possessions being stolen. As I've said, my partner's car got stolen. It's not just that. It was everything that happened afterwards. Getting it back. Are we not going to get it back? What happens when we get it back?
What condition is it in?
Correct.
What's broken?
My wallet was stolen. All my cards had to be cancelled. Every 5 minutes, oh, this didn't go through because your card's wrong. Oh, yep, got to jump on. Got to get a new license. Had to get a new student card. Had to get a new Medicare card. Couldn't go to the doctors because I needed my Medicare card,
And remember how we weren't allowed to point out the problem with crime as it grew over the last 10 years? It was politically incorrect. Or you must be a racist, or you must be whatever. You're imagining it. It's not that bad. Crime is down. Well, crime overall is down, but actually violent crime and home invasions are up a lot.
This is literally an Empress New Clothes moment. It's literally like it's staring you point blank in the face. And I was saying this to my partner, like, the problem I have with so many Australians, and I know I'm quite critical, and I think I can be because I live here, is that they don't care unless it impacts them specifically and directly. And I said that during COVID. No one gives a shit about COVID because right now they're happy at home.
Correct.
Until it gets to a point where it was affecting their children. And it was famously the playgrounds that sent people over the edge. I'm like, oh, it wasn't the fact that most people couldn't pay for their selves because they have no job. That didn't bother you? Anyway, I digress. But, with the crime thing, now it's gotten to a point where it's no longer twice removed. It's no longer anecdotal. It's you either know someone or you are that person that's had the home invasion.
Well, Orchard Street in Brighton is the street that you're talking about. So there have been home invasions on the 24th, the 28th, the 29th and the 30th of this month on that same street. Now, a couple of things. Firstly, the faces of those kids are going to be all over CCTV. Brighton is going to have a very high proportion of homes that have CCTV cameras. Their ability to travel in and out of that street, in and out of that area, they've been caught on who knows how many cameras. The police will know who these people are because we know that's how this works, right? There's the Rex Hunt, catch them, kiss them, and let them go kind of policing that goes on. So they've got these kids' faces. They know who these kids are. They're choosing not to go and get them from their homes or from their known hangouts. And these kids are coming back to the same street again and again. How long before a homeowner just goes, I have a cricket bat?
Yeah.
Right? And then that homeowner is going to be condemned.
Correct.
Because they had to protect their property after Victoria Police refused. They are actively choosing not to take the necessary steps.
Now, I know you're going to try and come back at me on this, but I want you to hear me. I know we went through COVID and we are not the biggest fans of Vic Pol, but I will say this on the record. The people that came to us, so we didn't know about our home invasion. It was the police who told us about it. So our neighbour across, I can't remember if I've told this story, I'll just tell it really briefly. Our neighbours across the street happened to see our car being stolen. It was parked in the driveway. My car's in the garage, my partner's car was in the driveway. And they called, I was going to say 911, they called 000.
What's the number for 911? Yeah.
Literally. Watch too much Hollywood movies. And so our neighbours, thank God, had already called the cops.
Yeah.
And they came across. And we have the footage from our next door neighbour whose camera was on our driveway. So we see the whole thing happen. We get woken up by the police. We're like, knock, knock, hello, because everything in our house is open. The garage door's open. My dogs are out on the street. And this is at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a deaf dog. She doesn't know what's going on. She's out the front. And the other one's skittish as hell. So, you know, it was the cops who were like, hey, your car's been stolen and your house has been burgled. And then when you wake up from a sleep, you're so disorientated. You're like, what?
And
like,
there's people in your house and then you've been robbed.
Yeah. And to make matters worse, I'm throwing my partner under the bus here. He snores. And so I wear earplugs at night. So I have literally no senses at night. I'm asleep. I can't hear anything. My dog's deaf. So, like, you know, there's a lot of things going here. It's just like, you know, which is why I keep bringing it up. Because
it's a little bit of a Monty Python sketch.
It is a little bit. It is a little bit, you know. And my partner gets up to meet the cops in his underwear. You know, it couldn't be worse if it tried.
At least he wears underwear.
Correct. But the point is, like, that the cops came. I think there's 8 police here. You know, there was 3 units, and then they had the crime scene people to do all the dusting, and they were like, we keep catching these kids. And I will say this about Vic Pol. This is where I was going with my story. They sat us down, like, because I was hysterical. I was beside myself. I thought they had actually stolen my laptop and my camera. And unbeknownst to me, thank God I'm really forgetful, because not only were my keys not where they normally are, my laptop was not where it normally is, and my camera wasn't. And that's because I had been working and went to bed and whatever. And so they would have taken those things had they been accessible. They wanted my car. They couldn't get it because I'm an idiot and don't know where my car keys are half the time. But the point is, the cops sat us down and they talked to us. They were so nice to us. And they said, we are catching them. It's not a point of not catching. It's not a point of not knowing who they are. It's that they keep being let out on bail. And we've talked about this before. And, you know, I understand what happened with COVID. I know a lot of TOFAs following will be like, yeah, we'll never forgive. I understand that, and I am angry just like you are, but there does have to come a point where this battle is now bigger than that. We have to find some common ground because this needs to be won, and the police are doing their job, but they're outnumbered, they're understaffed, and they're burnt out, and they work for a government that is absolutely, unequivocally uninterested in this epidemic.
I'm very happy to focus on the leadership and the failure of leadership at a political level and Victoria Police leadership. I'm very happy to concede that on a one-on-one basis, most police officers are lovely people. But I actually literally posted about this earlier today. We've just seen Tedros Ghebreyesus, the Director General of the World Health Organization, come out today saying, well, the World Health Organization never mandated anything. We don't have the power to do anything like that. So your anger is directed at the wrong place. But of course, this is how you turn nice people, decent people, ordinary police officers who actually, yes, are lovely people at an individual level. This is how they end up participating in what ultimately is human rights abuse and psychopathy, where you break down the human rights abuse into its component parts, and then each person's only doing a little part, and they can easily excuse themselves for doing that. So in this case, what Tedros is saying is, well, you can't blame me, I didn't mandate it. But now you've got the politician saying, well, you can't blame me, we were just following the World Health Organization's recommendations. right? So now everyone's pointing at everybody else. Oh no, it wasn't me. I didn't commit the crime. I wasn't involved in the human rights violation. And that's how you take good people who would never do that and make them actually do that. Right? And so this is the thing. It can be simultaneously true. The Victoria police officers are lovely people who are conscientious and want to do their job and want to solve crime, and will also gleefully participate in human rights abuse when it's presented to them in the wrong way. Those two things can be and are simultaneously true. On the issue of crime, we need to be absolutely holding Jacinta Allen's feet to the fire on this.
This is an election. This is an election-winning issue. Like if you come out strong on this, I think Brad Button, this will win an election if he tries.
But again, is that going to really make a difference? I can't get excited about the Victorian Liberal Party either. But at the same time, we do need to get rid of the Labor Party because they've been so bad that if we don't, then what are we saying? What does that say about us? But this has been the topic that we've not been allowed to talk about for 10 years. You can't talk about youth crime. You can't talk about violent crime going up. You're a racist. You're whatever. And here we are.
I want to use J.D. Vance's line here is, I don't care, Margaret. You know, that movie.
Yes.
And this is something that if I can give you guys anything to take home from this conversation with Chris, is that needs to be our new tone of voice. I don't care.
Correct.
They come back at you, you're a racist, you're a Nazi, you're a transphobe. I don't care. What I care about is wanting to be in my home, being safe with the things I spent my life working on, safe with me. And at this point, I am just sitting here in anxious anticipation, waiting for them to come and steal my car. You know, we're waiting for the next break-in. Our neighbour across the road...
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Oh, shit!
Perfect. For anyone who's listening to the audio, Carly may or may not have just pointed with
lifted her arm, and
outstretched arm with a flat hand, palm down
at a specific angle.
Yeah, that's not a good look, Carly.
Yeah, no, shit. Well, at least people will be talking about for 3 days and everything else that I've talked about. But yeah, my point is, across the street, another house was broken into, same thing. And, you know, it's just the same old story over and over again. And like I said, most people now either are the person who has had a home invasion or had the car stolen or they know someone.
Or they know the person.
And my point again is, you know, we look at the car industry in Australia, it's closed down, Fords and Holdens aren't made here, Holden doesn't exist anymore, and I've talked before about the VF Holdens and the Maloo Utes and all these people's pride and possessions being stripped, torn apart. They can't replace them. And what this does is it just sets something off in your brain where, and then this is what COVID did to a lot of people too, there's an anger there that will fester. And this is something I think is really important we discuss. Because we've talked about the pendulum inevitably always swings back. But what this does is sow those seeds of radicalization. And that is what we are going to see now. We are going to see vigilantism, and it's already happening. And I've spoken to you guys about the Facebook group Stolen Car Melbourne. Now they are all acting like a detective squad. They are finding these cars, they are finding these kids, and now it is just like the gloves are off.
And it's a matter of time before someone goes, well, if I know where they are.
Correct. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen. You know, retribution will be taken whether or not we like it or not. And it's, you know, I have to be honest here, a little part of me is like, good. Get it.
Actions need to have consequences, but this is one of the reasons why I bang on so much about the need for institutions to do their job, because when they leave that void, when you cannot get justice within the system, you make it far more likely that people will seek it outside of the system. And I would rather live in a world where justice is delivered within the system. And vigilantism isn't resorted to because it isn't necessary.
Correct. And this is my point, and this is what worries me. I mean, you've got people now who are getting to a point where you can say something quite sensible and it's a gateway into these radical movements. You know, just recently, I mean, we talked about Ruksham last week. We are seeing a rise in, what do we call them, nationalists or like neo-Nazis?
Well, National Socialists. So the Nazi Party is literally the National Socialist Party. That's what
but this new phase of these young men in the black and the...
the National Socialists,
So the only reason that is seeing a resurgence is because the progressives went so hard on the left. For each reaction, there's an equal opposite reaction.
Yes, and
You've given them a space to be like that. And, you know, I'm going to argue about Andrew Tate in a second as well. People like that pop up as a reaction to what happened over here on the progressive left. If you're going to have someone like an AOC or a Rachel Maddow or a Joy Behar, you're going to get an Andrew Tate. They're two sides of the exact same coin. And this is what happens. Your average person is being silent for too long, not making their point, out of fear of retribution or being cancelled or, upsetting the status quo. And then what happens? It festers and it gets to a point where it boils over. And now, and you and I disagree on this, we're going to see, or I hope to see, some kind of roundup of these kids and thrown into incarceration because that's the only action that I will tolerate at this point.
Well, the ones that are out on bail and then committing more crimes, I agree, put them into prison until they face court. They shouldn't be being...
the time for bleeding hearts is gone, and 5 years ago, maybe I would have been like, yes, I understand their socioeconomic position. I understand that, they don't have enough parents, all that sort of stuff. I don't care anymore.
Yeah. And this is the problem. When the institutions fail, we breed that kind of an approach. So when it comes to the National Socialist Network, guys, I don't actually think that their presence is a consequence or is actually a genuine reaction to anything in particular, because actually they are one and the same. The National Socialist Network guys on that extreme end, they are hardcore totalitarian socialists. That's what they are. They just add a white ethno-nationalism over the top of it. So they're just socialist racists. Your hardcore communist end are totalitarian socialists. They're just globalist socialists as opposed to white
the political spectrum
nationalists.
is a circumference. It's like it's a circle.
It's the old horseshoe theory. So those people actually, I think, are... I mean, what was it? I should have prepared this for today's show. There is a major former leader of... Was it not BLM? One of those movements, who is now a prominent leader of National Socialist Network here in Australia.
Oh, Joel Davis. He was Antifa.
He was Antifa. Yeah, that's right. You go, well... So some people are like, oh, look, he's gone from all the way over here to all the way over here. No, he hasn't. It's like he shuffled his feet a little bit. That's all he did. There's so little difference between those two.
He's a self-confessed anarchist, and he was an anarchist as Antifa, so he went in there because he was like, loved the idea. He said something, I'm paraphrasing here, I'd have to go watch it again, but he said something about he wanted an opportunity to throw Molotov cocktails.
Yeah.
And then he realised that, he has more power over here on this side, so that's where he is.
Yeah. So... These guys are not a reaction to that movement. They are actually a part of that movement. The reaction to that movement is ordinary people who run businesses or work jobs and have families thinking to themselves, if that ever happens to me again, I ain't calling the cops.
Yeah.
That's the reaction.
But we're actually at that, and I think people don't see this. And this is my frustration with COVID as well. And the reason I keep bringing that up is we just went through it, and people seem to have not learned the lesson. The only reason we came out of lockdown 6 is because enough people were like, fuck this, right?
Yep.
And it wasn't because you and I were speaking up since April 2020. It didn't matter. It took 2 years for that to come and for the average person to go, all right, now I've had enough.
Yeah.
And it's the same with youth crime. This isn't news. This isn't recent.
It's been 10 years boiling.
It's been happening for a while. It's only now that it's getting to a point where these kids are so emboldened, they do not care. They're streaming these break-ins. They're streaming them racing them on the streets. They do not fear the police whatsoever. But now you're getting people going, all right, enough. And all it's going to take, it's a tinderbox. You're just waiting for one person to be like, it's a free-for-all. One of these kids is going to get bashed, or if not worse. Yeah. And then everyone's going to be outraged. And I spoke about this in the very first podcast where there was a stolen car and one of the kids died. And everyone's come out going, oh, that poor kid, he got caught up with the wrong kids. Yeah. We're going to see one of these kids get bashed. Oh, it's outrageous they got bashed.
Yeah, racial hate crime or something like that.
This is cause and effect. This is a deliberate outcome of your ineffective actions or lack of action.
And when the state fails to do the things that it has promised us it will do, the state said, give us your guns, we will keep you safe. The state said, don't go and be a vigilante and get retribution, we'll put them through the justice system. And then when those things that the state said, hey, we'll take care of this, they don't take care of it, people take it back. But they usually take it back further than what they would have if it had been in their hands in the first place.
And I think, to round out the conversation on this, this is where you and I disagree. And I think this is the problem about the political spectrum where people fail to recognize their own bias is it's really great to sit there and go, I'm a libertarian. And, I think about all these things esoterically. When it actually happens, the practicalities, I sit there and go, well, shit, okay, now I'm in the spotlight. What do I want to happen here? And whilst I understand that there's nuance to everything and you need to have these conversations, I believe when it comes to the youth crime epidemic, they need to be rounded up and incarcerated. Most of these kids are so emboldened that they don't care. And whilst that might be some kind of breach of human rights and it's not right and it's going to radicalize them, at this point, the victims need to be given more consideration than these youths. The people who are living in fear, waiting for the home invasion to happen, they should be prioritized. And what will make people feel safe is these kids are off the street.
Well, there's nothing in what you've said that is incompatible with the libertarian position. From a libertarian point of view, if there is a victim, there is a crime. And if someone is believed genuinely to have committed a crime, and it's reasonably believed would continue to commit crimes if we let them out of prison, well, you hold them in prison. Like, that's that. There's nothing incompatible with the libertarian position. We talked about this before. Someone commits their first crime, then if the other circumstances make it reasonable to do so, you would let them out on bail until their trial, because innocent until proven guilty, etc. They get arrested whilst on bail because they're now believed to have committed another equal crime or worse crime. At that point, they shouldn't be getting back out. That's the point at which you go, no, I'm sorry, you are staying in prison until you face a judge and you get sentenced for your actions.
We've had that conversation, and there's articles out there in the Australian press saying, like, it can't be done. It's too big a problem. And it's like, you watched El Salvador do it in 18 months. And if he can round up those gang members, we can do it with youth crime here.
Yeah, so long as we're targeting people that are actually genuinely suspected of having actually committed crimes, then there's no problem with the libertarian position. It's the rounding up everyone that has a certain tattoo or something like that. That's where you run into problems with the libertarian position and frankly, problems with human rights. But we've got these kids' faces. These people are known to police. The police have arrested them successfully in the past, and they're saying to you, well, they just kept getting released by the judges. Something needs to change at that judicial level where they turn around and they no longer release these people and allow them to just continue running amok.
I would argue, and you're going to hate me for saying this, but it's, and this is my point about radicals who say things that on a surface level make a lot of sense, and then obviously the undertone or the undercurrent underneath their sentiments can be a bit worrying. But Andrew Tate came out, right, and we talked about this in the very first episode, and he was like, oh, you need to humiliate them, put it like a streaming camera in their cell. Sure. And I remember you and I talked about that. Then later, my partner and I were dissecting it, and he made a really good point. You would only need to do that for one or two.
Sure, and Tate did say the same thing. He did say it would only be for a small number of people. So this is the emotional desire to make an example out of someone versus the need to maintain actual justice. So too much justice is itself an injustice. That's if you over punish someone for doing something, you've committed an injustice on top. And the desire to make an example out of someone usually leads to an injustice against that person. Now, we might go, well, eye for an eye, tit for tat, he did X and now we've gone and absolutely smashed him. But what we've done is set a precedent now that does not augur well within the justice system. All we need to do, literally all we need to do, is actually apply justice. Crazy, I know, but if we just actually applied justice to the people who are believed to have committed serious crimes with real victims who deserve justice, then all of this goes away.
But the moral of the story is the government just doesn't care. They don't want to.
That is certainly how it looks. They are more worried about having to admit that there is a crime problem.
Or admit that they were wrong.
Than actually deal with crime.
Correct. Yeah, and I think that's the thing that frustrates me the most about politics is I can understand ideologies, I can understand this utopian idea, but the practicalities and how it plays out is completely different. And when you cannot have the humility to come out and go, hey, we thought this, but unfortunately it hasn't worked out, so we're going to fix it, I would have so much more respect for you.
Or even if you have to be cynical about it politically, just go, wow, there's this crime wave that suddenly started happening. There wasn't a problem up until last month, but you know what, we're going to take rapid, decisive action now that there is... Like, go and play your political cards however you think you have to, but don't go leaving victims without justice and criminals running amok on the street.
All right, we need to round this up because I think we're almost at 2 hours. Right. But I want to finish with the protests in the city. Now, we are both Melburnians. I know you have left. My partner and I...
God for that.
My partner and I had a very heated discussion about this yesterday because, and when I heated it, we both agree, but we're both sort of getting so passionate about this. We're like, what is the trigger point for us to go, all right, we've tried, we stayed, I can't do it anymore.
As in to leave.
To leave. Now,
about 2 years ago.
Yeah, well, and this is the thing, I was thinking about it during COVID. My partner has a location-based business.
Pretty sure my next door neighbours are going to sell up soon. It'd be a much shorter commute for me to come to the studio if you moved up there, just saying.
And so my point is, like, we were sitting there going, this is a real conversation we're now having. If Labor, God help us, was to win another election in Victoria, we would have to leave. It comes a point where you are self-sacrificing for no reason. And that's a discussion that I didn't want to have. Melbourne's my home. I love my city. I have no desire to go live in Queensland or Sydney. No offense. I just don't want to. I like the climate
There are other parts of Australia besides Brisbane and Sydney.
They don't exist.
Go and sip your latte.
Yeah, right? And so, but this is the thing, like, I shouldn't be having to have this conversation in my own country, you know? This is a great country, it's a great state, it's a beautiful city. We went into the city on the weekend. I wanted to go see an exhibition at the National Gallery. Yeah. And, you know, I mean, yes, it was Australia Day weekend, it was busy, the tennis was on, but we made the decision to go in on the Saturday because obviously it was Australia Day the following day, and we knew there'd be all the protests. And to go and see how decimated our city was, it is getting to a point where these businesses cannot open because of these protests. And it's no longer, I understand the freedom, the human right to protest, but when does it become a point of, it's no longer a protest. Your point has been made time and time again. You're holding the city to ransom.
Yeah. And that's what it's becoming. This is a really, really important area where we do need to be careful, but if anything, we're perhaps being a bit too permissive now, which is ironic because they certainly weren't too permissive during COVID. A protest cannot require a government permit or anything like that. There was discussion about, should there be a permit system? No, there shouldn't. If you want to protest, you should be able to protest. But the minute you start denying access or essentially antisocially stopping other people from enjoying the public property that you're on, now there's a problem. Yeah. Right? This is where, for example, you just stop oil people. They'll have 10 people will show up and they'll shut down a freeway. Well, 10 people can fit on a footpath. Now, if you had 10,000 people, you're going to shut down the freeway. Yeah. But that's 10,000 members of the public on public land. That's to pass through that area. That's probably fair enough. Yeah. But to have 10 people shut down a freeway, well, at that point, that's public nuisance. Yeah. You don't need to be on that main road. Now, the Palestine rallies, etc., are getting pretty big crowds at the moment. They're getting a lot of people, so I can understand that that's going to cause some disruption. But the way that they're behaving is so antisocial and is so unpleasant for everybody else that no one wants to go into the city. No one wants to be anywhere near them, and therefore all the vendors and everyone that runs pubs and shops and everything else are losing out in a really big way. I would suggest if they don't want to lose their social license to, you know, as much as I don't think the government should stop them from protesting, they're losing their social license. Yeah. People are running out of patience. Yeah. And if they want to stop that from happening, probably go once a month, choose different locations, spread yourself around a little bit, and don't be a bunch of pricks about it.
There's a level of violence there as well, and not to be hyperbolic. I mean, violence, yes, physically, but the slogans they're choosing, death to the colony, Australia will fall, this is antisocial behaviour. I have no problem with you protesting, but when it gets to a point where I have to feel afraid to be in my own city, I would argue this is no longer a protest. This is...
So I saw this when I was in London. So I was in London, actually you were as well. Yeah. We were in London for the ARC conference, the very first London ARC, and that was shortly after October 7th. The pro-Palestine protests were kicking off in a big way. Myself and Rukshan went and covered one of them. And, we weren't making a big noise or fuss about who we were or why we were there. We were just kind of blending in and observing. And I was listening to all these different chants, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and all these sorts of things. And I'm like, that is a call to genocide, whether you like it or not. Yeah. And then there was this chant that they did about "we will return," and I'm watching all these sort of white, weedy Greens voting, university students chanting about how they're going to return to Palestine. Yeah. Like, you are deeply unserious. Yes. Like, you want to be seen to be here. Yes. I will guarantee you that of the approximately 100,000 people that were legitimately there, I saw at one point, I was along the riverside, I got actually a vantage point of this crowd. It was a phenomenally big crowd. We got caught up in it. Your wife and I, we were, your wife and your daughter, we got caught in it. It was genuinely a very, very big crowd, but I will guarantee you that out of that 100,000 plus people, maybe 100 would ever have actually returned. Yeah. And that's probably optimistic. It's probably a dozen or less. And so these people are not actually here to do anything. They're not here to actually change anything. They're here to make noise. Yeah. They're not genuinely believing that it's going to change anything politically. They are there to virtue signal. And they are there to essentially draw a bunch of attention to themselves, get the social media coverage, do all of that stuff that they want to do, and then bugger off. And I find it is a difficult position for me to find myself in, because I am resolutely pro-protest, and I don't believe they should have to ask for permission or get permits or any of that sort of stuff. But can you just stop being pricks? Yeah. Like, please. Yeah. Just be nice to people for a change.
Yeah. And this is what happens. The left has had the upper hand in Australia for so long. They're so emboldened, they don't care anymore. It's the same. It's just failed policy. But I think the last thing to round out this discussion, because we are going to run out of time, is we're going to talk about the St Kilda MAGA hat controversy.
Oh, gosh. This is so good. So give us a rundown.
Okay, so I'm going to say his name. It's Angelo Notta. And he was asked to remove his MAGA hat at Captain Baxter in St Kilda. Now, Captain Baxter, for those who aren't familiar, it's right on the water. It's a really nice spot. It's right in the middle of the heartland of St Kilda. Very popular spot to be seen and get your Instagram photos. But he was told by the staff it was inciting political trouble. And I believe this happened over the Australia Day weekend or on Australia Day. So particularly like volatile day at the best of times. He complied, but he felt embarrassed, and he's now considering a legal action with human rights organisation.
Which is just delicious. So I don't think that these sorts of things should be suable offences, but the law is what it is. And if the law is going to be what it is, I don't have a problem with people using it.
Yeah.
And saying, and even if it's just for the purpose of having everyone else go, oh, you can't do that. Well, the law says I can. How about we work together to change the law for everybody so that no one can do that? But for as long as you can do it, I can do it.
Well, no one seems to have a problem with like always was, always will be, or, you know, the Palestinian slogans, you know, from the river to the sea. It's no different.
Now, can I also point out, though, the genuine unspoken expectation on the part of the staff that someone else was going to start a fight with him. Because they're not accusing him of being violent or being aggressive or threatening violence. What they're saying is the very fact that you are an identifiably pro-Trump person is going to lead to somebody else entering the picture and attacking you.
Yeah.
That's actually the admission. That's actually the expectation that they had.
My frustration with this as well is that, you know, we are, those of us who are, anyone that's not progressive left is sat there and having to listen to this vitriol from them telling us how we're hateful, we're Nazis, we're bigots, we're transphobes, whatever. And that vitriol has been so, like, overwhelming for years. We sit there and we cop it and we listen. The few and far between times when someone has the balls to actually go and do something like wearing a MAGA hat or, you know, a Trump, something pro-Trump, or even just the Australian flag, we suffer this, how dare you do that? And it's like, hang a minute, you've been doing this for years. You're doing it now.
I don't get to object when Qantas lands a plane and welcomes me to my own country.
Yeah.
I don't get to have a problem with that. I don't get to have a problem when I show up to a footy match and the same thing happens. I'm not allowed to have a problem with someone walking past with any one of a number of
Just recently, over the weekend, Sam Newman walked out of a welcome to country. That apparently is controversial, but, you know, me sitting there and being welcomed to my country every 5 minutes at every opportunity, I'm not allowed to get annoyed at that.
People can walk around with a hammer and sickle. People can walk around with a Che Guevara top. People, even after the end of the referendum on The Voice, even after it had failed, there are some people live not far from where I live, and they go for a walk regularly together as a couple, and they were still wearing their tops. I'm not allowed to have a problem with any of that. And to be quite honest, apart from the welcome to country stuff, which is just tiresome, I don't have a problem with people wearing T-shirts and hats and having slogans and what have you. Have at it. Go for it. But the minute you want to have a problem with me doing the same thing, now we've got a problem.
Yeah. And I mean, I've got a couple of Trump T-shirts, which I think are amazing. And I like them and I want to wear them. But every time I do it, I just go, don't cause trouble, pal.
I have one Trump hat that was given to me at Mar-a-Lago. I did put it on during the last episode, and it's kind of precious to me. And it's pure white, and I don't wear it out in public. I took a photograph of myself with it last week just for shits and giggles, but I don't actually wear it out. But there is also that thought of I could wear this out. And even for me, I do work on my phone. I'm on my social media pages and so forth, and I'm on the train coming down, and I'm thinking, well, what if someone takes exception to me? I mean, people can have some really weird and quite violent reactions, as I've discovered with various interactions over my life. We shouldn't have to live with that kind of fear.
Yeah.
And yet it's being projected onto us like we're the ones causing the problem.
I'm going to tell a story, and again, as I always do when I tell these stories, I'm going to be very loose on the details because it's really important, but I just want to talk about how emboldened the left is and people who disagree with us are. These people have a forum where they discuss my life to the nth degree. Everything I post, I've talked about this before. They have somehow found my partner and where he works, and they've decided to do things to get my partner's attention. And that's all I'm going to say. I won't add any more to it than that. That's how deranged these people are. I've never met these people. I don't know who they are. We never interact in real life. But they have taken upon themselves to not only stalk me, they're now stalking my partner and taking physical actions to intimidate us.
Yeah.
And I can't do shit about it.
Yeah.
Explain that to me.
Yeah, look, it is madness, but the thing that I keep in the back of my mind is people that change the world, people that are leaders, talk about ideas.
Yeah.
Ordinary people, average people, talk about events, and below average people talk about people.
Yes.
And so those people that are talking about you are putting themselves into a category of person that just doesn't matter. Yes, I get that it's unpleasant.
Yeah.
But actually, these are not people that are going to change the world. These are not people that are going to do anything with their life. And they have made that decision for themselves and proven that decision by being obsessed with you.
Yeah. But that's what we expect from the left now, unfortunately. And I think that alone, I mean, I'm really cautious telling those stories because I don't want me to tell those or you tell the stories of us and what we've faced to deter people from having the courage to speak up either. Thankfully, people like yourself, me, Rukshan, there's a host of us, Avi, you know, we cop it, we keep doing it anyway. And I really do hope eventually now, thank you, you know, I opened saying this, thanks to Trump coming out and just going full force, JD Vance coming out saying, I don't care. I hope that now inspires a few more people to go, you know what? I don't care anymore either.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, you know, let's just go forth. And that's why I think these kind of podcasts are so important, where we are able to have these conversations. Neither you or I are sitting here going, we're right about everything, we have all the answers. On the contrary, I don't have any answers. No. But I do know that I want to be able to speak about this. I do know that I want to learn and I want to be able to find some kind of common ground so that, you know, in a year's time, 10 years' time, 20 years' time, we're not still stuck in the same position.
I want to propose a new final segment that's going to have to start next week.
Yeah.
And that is we need to close on something that we're looking forward to this week.
I know what I'm looking forward to.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to Cairns tomorrow.
Oh,
yeah.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I'm going up to Queensland, going to Cairns for the weekend. So.
Well, on that note, I know what I'm looking forward to. Getting the F out of Melbourne in a few hours' time. Well, next week, you can look forward to next week. We will finish the show with what we're looking forward to next week.
And that's it, guys. I think we're almost at 2 hours.
I think we are, yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning in. And I will say this, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to not only Topher, but to me as well.
Look us both up.
Follow us on X. We are trying to get this podcast out to more people. And it's really important, I think, for people who aren't like politically focused to witness these conversations. That's a big reason behind why we're doing what we're doing. We used to do lives on IG throughout COVID, and people always I think people always enjoyed them, but I think now it's about opening the audience up to more people who feel a little bit more, you know, interested in learning outside.
I just want to enjoy this moment when the world is changing before our very eyes, and I want to be a part of it, and I want to be able to talk about all the good stuff that's happening. Yeah, and I think that's really important. So guys, tune in for the next episode. We'll see you next week here on the Oddcast. Yay!